Welcome to Actual Fandom. I'm really excited to finally review a horror film on the channel, and this is just the first of many to come. I'm going to share my thoughts on the A24 film X. X is a 2022 American slasher film written, directed, produced, and edited by Ty West, whose films include The Roost, The House of the Devil, The Innkeepers, The Sacrament, and In a Valley of Violence. X stars Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, Martin Henderson, Brittany Snow, Owen Campbell, Stephen Ure, and Scott Mescudi, who you may know better as Kid Cudi. The movie follows a cast and crew in the late 1970s who come together to make a pornographic movie on an elderly couple's rural Texas property, but they find themselves at the mercy of a vicious and unconventional killer. X was filmed in New Zealand, despite taking place in Texas. It had its world premiere at South by Southwest on March 13th, 2022, and was released theatrically worldwide on March 18th by the studio A24. It received generally positive reviews, with critics noting its obvious influences from 20th century slasher movies, most notably the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. X falls into the horror subgenre called psychobiddy, which some say is problematic, and I'll talk more about psychobiddy in a few moments, because I'd never heard the term and I was pretty fascinated by what I learned. So X takes place in 1979 as aspiring pornographic actress Maxine Minks, played by Mia Goth, embarks on a road trip through Texas with her producer boyfriend Wayne and their fellow actors Bobby Lynn and Jackson Hole, as well as director RJ and RJ's girlfriend Lorraine. Their plan is to shoot an adult film for the theatrical market, which was booming at the time due to the previous year's success of Debbie Does Dallas. The group arrives at the farm of Howard and Pearl, an elderly couple whose guest house the group intends to shoot the film in. The film they plan to shoot is called The Farmer's Daughters. But the old couple's a little creepy. Howard is temperamental, he pulls his shotgun on the group when they first arrive, and Pearl is silently stalking Maxine. The elderly couple are not aware of what the group is actually doing in the farmhouse that they're renting. Maxine has an encounter with Pearl, and Pearl laments her old age, and she expresses jealousy for Maxine's youth, and even makes a sexual advance toward her. Pearl later watches through the window as the group is filming some of the scenes for the movie, and she gets a little into it. Pearl begs her husband Howard, a veteran of both world wars, to have sex with her, but he declines, saying that his heart wouldn't be able to take it. So yeah, there's plenty of nudity and sex scenes as the crew films their movie, which is to be expected, given the premise. But X makes you pay for the pleasure by not limiting the nudity and sex to just the sexy, youthful characters. That's right, old people banging. This uncomfortable contrast forces us to think about how we view youth, beauty, and sex. I mean, nobody likes to think about their grandparents fucking. Well, I'm sure some people do, Rule 34 and all, but most of us don't. Then there's that good old-fashioned horror trope of tying promiscuous and unmarried sex to violence, both visually and thematically. The implication being that young people fucking is basically like inviting themselves to be brutally murdered. In X, this is very intentional by Ty West, and it plays on those old slasher tropes while simultaneously commenting on them. Violence and sex have always gone hand in hand in horror films. In the 1965 film Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, the narrator explains, while violence cloaks itself in a plethora of disguises, its favorite mantle remains sex. From the moment that Bela Lugosi seduced his first maiden in the 1931 Dracula film, penetrating her flesh and sinking his fangs into her supple skin, Lon Chaney Jr. unleashing the beast within in 1941's The Wolfman, falling in love with the girl and at the same time hunting her down at night. Then of course there's Laurie Strode in the first Halloween film, who was the one teen who did not engage in sex, and she was the one that lived. But back to X. For a horror movie about 5 people filming a porno in Texas, X has a lot to say. The takeaways could be different depending on the viewer, but I personally take it as a piece of media meant to make us reconsider our preconceived notions about sex, age, beauty standards, and there's even some stuff in there about how Southern Baptists demonize the natural act of humans banging. There's not a whole lot of kills in X, but the ones that are there are really, really good and satisfying, at least if you're a gorehound like myself. The cinematography is excellent, the performances are solid, although, as a born and raised Texan, I have to say that the southern accents that the characters have is more like what you'd find in Alabama or Mississippi. I'm not going to take points away from the movie for that though. A prequel film to X called Pearl, about the horny old lady in X, was secretly shot back to back with X and is currently in post-production. And maybe the prequel will add some context to Pearl being depicted as a violent, disgusting old woman, which falls into the subgenre of psycho-biddy horror. Psycho-biddy combines elements of the horror, thriller, and women's film genres. The term and the genre have received criticism. In particular, claims that psycho-biddy films exploit aging actresses who have experienced or are vulnerable to ageism. Critics say that the genre depicts aging women at their core as monstrously othered objects. Psycho-biddy is said to have begun in 1962 with the cult classic Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, an American psychological horror thriller movie starring Joan Crawford and Bette Davis, two film legends who began acting in movies in the earliest days of cinema. In Baby Jane, they each portrayed aging actresses that are engaged in a bitter rivalry. Psycho-biddy, also called hagsploitation and hag horror, is said by some to exploit disparaging terms for older women, such as hag and biddy, to not only indicate how unattractive the female characters in these films are, but to also show that these characters are psychotic, violent, unstable. But the British Film Institute's Justin Johnson responds to these criticisms by saying, if Crawford and Davis didn't carve out this niche with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a lot of legendary actresses would not have had third career acts. Other defenders have argued that the criticism of psycho-biddy as a subgenre is inaccurate, as it implies that the actresses are lowering their standards by acting in a horror film, and by also implying that their earlier work is somehow superior. The criticism also implies that these actresses are only depicting this character out of desperation. In my opinion, the criticisms against psycho-biddy do seem to remove the agency from these actresses. So, as for X itself, would I recommend it? Yes, to fans of slasher horror, especially if you like your bloodbaths to include a layer of social commentary. The themes of age, sex, beauty, and violence have seldom been done in this way, at least that I've seen and in recent years, but they're worth exploring. The filmmaking is excellent, and I'll definitely be checking out more of Ty West's movies, as well as the X prequel when it's released. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe because I'll be reviewing plenty more horror media in the Bloody AF series. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button. Comment and tell me what you thought of X if you saw it, or what you think about the psycho-biddy subgenre. And what other horror films do you want to see reviewed on Bloody AF? You can hit the link below to join our Discord, where you can hang out with other fans of comics, sci-fi, horror, anime, all kinds of stuff. Plus, you can vote for future video topics. And if you'd like to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/actualfandom. Or you can become a channel member by clicking join below the video. I also accept tips on Venmo at Dane-Danely or paypal.me/actualcontext. All those links are in the description, as well as for my second channel, Live AF, where you can catch live streams including reviews, gaming, and chats. As always, actual fandom means be an ambassador, not a gatekeeper. Peace.